What's up, heathens? How ya doing? I'm the Godless engineer, and I critically analyze apologists' claims to give you the best arguments and information so that you can stand up and use your voice. Welcome back, heathens! I'm so glad to get right back into making content every single week. I thoroughly enjoyed my time off, but I'm ready to jump right back into it. And we're going to do that today with a video from Lukas from Deflate.
Atheism is not a belief, but the mere lack of belief is what our atheist friends keep telling us. But if that's true, then atheism faces a tough logical hurdle, and in this video, I will tell you why.
Oh. Well, I'm glad that we're going to be getting into that in this video because I don't know what logical hurdle you're talking about there, Lukas. But I'm very intrigued and I want to know what logical hurdle you think atheists can overcome. Well, to find out what Lukas is talking about here, then please stay tuned. Alright, heathens, well, to begin this video, I do want to lay out what my position is as far as atheism goes. More specifically, the definition of atheism. Now, for me, atheism is a lack of belief or a non-belief in a deity, meaning that I simply don't believe one to exist. And so I live my life as if one does not exist. Now, that's just what I believe. It doesn't really speak to anything that I know. If you wanted to talk about any positive claims that I might make, I would say that I don't know if a God exists or not, which would also make me an agnostic. That's why I generally clarify that my position is an agnostic atheist, because both of those things can exist at the same time as a label. I'm agnostic to the idea of a God on the whole, whether or not he exists or not, I don't know. But as far as what I believe, I don't believe a God to exist. Now, a lot of people out there classify that as merely a lack of belief, and I'm fine with them using that definition for it. I, however, choose to go with the definition of non-belief. It's a non-belief in a deity. I just simply don't have that belief that a God does exist. Alright, so now that we clarified that, let's get into Lukas's video.
Hi, I'm Lukas from Deflate, and this apologetics channel is all about pointing out why faith wins. Click that subscribe button and the bell to make sure you get my future videos.
And my channel, in case you're new, is all about critically analyzing your claims against atheism so that people can stand up and use their voice against those claims.
If atheism is nothing but the absence of any belief or claim about God, this basically means that to speak of atheism is to describe a psychological condition, namely the condition that the proposition God exists is not to be found in the atheist brain or mind. And if atheism is essentially the absence of the proposition God exists, then carrots, the Eiffel Tower, and butterflies are atheists too.
Okay. Sure, you could apply the label to those particular objects, but considering those objects don't really have the capability of considering whether or not a God exists, I feel like that label is being misused. Just like non-believer could also apply to all of those objects, non-Christian could also apply to all of those objects. I don't see the point that you're making here when you're like, oh, the Eiffel Tower's an atheist. That fucking butterfly, beautiful as shit, but an atheist. Like, I don't understand the point in all that when you can misuse labels all that you want to. Christians all the time will claim that their dogs are praying or that they're Christian in some kind of way, especially when it comes to small children, like babies that don't really have the capacity to consider whether or not God exists. They will also say that they are Christians. Now, I have heard some atheists say that, well, babies are inherently atheists. I would caution against this because I would more or less label them as secular babies. Like, babies are secular. They start out secular. They have no regard to religion whatsoever. They don't know about it. If God does exist, then we should definitely be able to detect him in some kind of reliable way that would prove that he does exist. But yet we don't have that kind of evidence. That's why I remain unconvinced. But the idea that you can misapply a label to objects that cannot actually hold that label in some kind of way is something that everybody does. So I feel like your argument here right out the gate kind of falls flat.
Now, a psychological condition is, of course, not the same thing as a claim. The difference may not be self-evident, so let me illustrate this with an example. Let's say I go hiking in the Swiss Alps with my wife, and suddenly I spot an eagle. Me getting excited and going, "Wow!" while pointing to the sky is representative of a psychological state, namely the state of excitement arising from the experience of spotting the eagle. It's not a truth claim about the eagle. However, when I put up a post on my Facebook wall that says, "I saw an eagle in the Alps today," I'm making a claim to truth, namely that eagles, or at least one eagle, exists in the Alps and that I went hiking there today.
Well, yeah, but I mean, the truth, as far as atheism goes in this particular example, with you just labeling atheism as a psychological state, which would be representative of any belief or non-belief that you would have, the truth claim comes in as to whether or not you had that particular experience or psychological state. That's where the truth claim lies, not in the idea of an eagle actually being there. What if it was, not an eagle, but some other kind of large bird? You would still have that experience and see something in the sky, but yet it wasn't an eagle. There's many, you're really boiling this down way too far into such a simplistic kind of analogy here that I don't really feel like it encapsulates the entire conversation around whether or not God exists, because you can definitely still have that experience of awe and wonder and surprise and all that when it's not really an eagle that's in the sky. Maybe it's something else. Maybe it's some falling piece of shit. I don't know. It could have been anything, but you think it was an eagle. You had that experience. So, I mean, the truth claim lies on whether or not you had the experience, not on whether or not there was an eagle there.
Psychological states and truth claims are two categorically different things, and one of their key differences is this: only claims have what philosophers call truth value.
Well, yeah, but again, the claim is that you had that experience, not that the eagle exists. So while I do agree that they're categorically different, you're misapplying what the truth claim would be in the situation of you having the experience. You having the experience of awe, wonder, or whatever in the fuck does not speak to the truth value of whatever you experience that awe and wonder at.
In plain English, this basically means that claims can be true or false. Psychological states, however, cannot be true or false. Instead, they just are. Going back to my example, it would be absurd to ask whether my excitement about that eagle is either true or false. Instead, my excitement, like any other psychological state, such as anger, frustration, or joy, just is.
No, it wouldn't be absurd to ask you if you had that experience or had that particular psychological state. That wouldn't be absurd. You can lie about having a psychological state. You can lie about having awe and wonder at the eagle. Whether or not there was an eagle there, it doesn't matter as to whether or not you had that experience. You could have seen the eagle and not felt anything, but decided to lie to people and say, "Yep, look, an eagle," because you know that's what people are supposed to do. So again, you just seem to be further conflating the truth claim of the eagle in the sky with the truth claim of you having the experience. Like, those are both truth claims. Just because you had an experience doesn't mean that whatever other truth claim is true or real.
On the other hand, me posting "I saw an eagle in the Alps today" entails a proposition that is either true or false, and its truth can be verified, namely by checking whether there are eagles in the Alps and whether Lukas really went there today.
True. I want to piggyback off of this, though, because you can independently verify whether eagles exist in the Alps, right? That's good. So, whether or not you believe there to be eagles in the Alps, you can still independently investigate whether or not it's possible or probable that you saw an eagle that day. Regardless of any kind of truth claim that anybody could make about whether or not you saw an eagle, it can still be independently verified. Keep this in mind.
Now let's say I go hiking but don't spot an eagle, which does not cause me any excitement.
Okay, so you had a brisk walk in the Alps. By the way, I wish that I could just go on a brisk walk in the Alps, but fuck, I'm all the way over here in dumb fucklandia.
Surely it is the height of absurdity to suggest that the absence of that excitement is true. And that's because, again, only claims can have truth value.
I mean, yeah, people would say, oh, so you didn't get excited by the eagle that was flying around the Alps. Oh, no, I didn't. Okay, well, that's a truth claim. Whether or not you had the experience is a truth claim. I experienced awe and wonder today. That is a claim that only you can verify. It is a psychological state. It does just exist. It does just happen. But whether or not you actually had it is the truth claim.
Only claims can be true or false. This does not and cannot apply to psychological states, even less so to psychological states that don't actually happen. Which brings us right back to the atheist's claim that atheism means the absence of the claim God exists in the atheist's brain. Categorically speaking, this turns atheism into exactly the same thing as me not experiencing excitement after not spotting an eagle on my hike.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that it's a decent analogy because I don't have the experience of thinking that God exists. I don't think that God exists. I don't believe a God to exist. So God existing is a non-existent thought in my head, just like you with your non-existent wonder at the non-existent eagle. I don't know why you're acting like these things are so absurd to think, other than the fact that you're a diehard Christian, which, I mean, I don't really care whether or not you're a diehard Christian, but this right here it's really confusing to me because it just seems fucking normal.
But then again, who would even think about discussing whether psychological states that don't happen are true or false?
Well, it's not whether or not the psychological states are true or false, it's whether or not you have that psychological state. Since you're boiling atheism down to the psychological state of not believing in a God, then the claim would be, do you not believe in a God? Oh, no, I don't believe in a God. Oh, okay, well then that's true. You don't believe in a God. You see how this just seems fucking normal to me? Like like saying that somebody does not believe in Bigfoot. Like if you were to put these things together, like side by side, the Bigfoot one to you at least would seem reasonable. Like, yeah, but Bigfoot, fuck Bigfoot, he doesn't exist. But then when we get to atheism, you're like, I don't know, this seems a little bit fishy here, and you're being illogical as fuck, aren't you? Yep, you are, because God does exist.
And so, if an atheist defines him or herself essentially as a person whose psyche doesn't feature the thought God exists, it follows that it is logically impossible for their atheism to be true, because psychological states simply have no business with truth value.
Yes, that's what I'm trying to tell you. Atheism does not make a truth claim. Atheism is about what you believe. A truth claim, or a claim to something I know, would be a different story. And that's where the agnosticism comes in, because I don't know whether or not a God actually exists. That would be my truth claim. I don't know if he exists. But as far as atheism goes, atheism is merely a lack of a belief, meaning that I have a non-belief in a deity. I don't believe that that deity exists. That would be a psychological state, because as you're pointing out here, psychological states can't be true or false. Atheism and theism would both be psychological states in this particular context.
Now, if that's atheism's ordeal, how could it possibly make any logical sense for a person to both claim that they care about truth and to call themselves atheists at the same time?
because the two things aren't connected. You can want the truth about something, but also have just a lack of belief or a non-belief in a deity. I don't see how those two things butt heads, because I'm not making a claim that a deity doesn't exist. I'm saying that I don't believe a deity to exist. So, I mean, I don't see how the truth value of something and whatever I believe, those two things are separate, all right? And you can care about what's actually true and try to get to what's actually true, but your beliefs be something completely different. Okay, so I mean, these two things are, they're separate things. So I don't understand why you think that just having a non-belief or a lack of belief in a deity means that I can't search for truth. Now, if you want me to make a positive claim about God, I would say that I don't know whether or not he exists as far as the truth goes. But as far as the truth goes, I don't think that I'll ever actually know the truth.
So if you're an atheist and care about logic, here is your dilemma.
Oh shit, not another dilemma. Holy fuck, these are coming out the woodworks lately.
Option 1. You may continue to define atheism as a psychological state, by virtue of which you logically and conclusively wave goodbye to the possibility that atheism might actually be true.
Well, I'm not waving bye-bye to logic or anything like that in my hopes that atheism is true, because I don't have any hopes about atheism being true. I'm not biased towards one particular conclusion. Now, I do have a belief that God probably doesn't exist, right? But just because I have that belief now doesn't mean that my beliefs can't change in the future. You could possibly sufficiently prove to me that God exists. So I don't necessarily have any kind of bias or hope that atheism is true. It's true that I hold that non-belief or that lack of belief, but as far as atheism being directly correlated to what is absolutely true, I don't care whether or not atheism is truly representative of the truth. I just want to know what the absolute truth is.
However, you're then entangling yourself in a self-contradiction if you keep making counter-arguments to theistic arguments because of the simple fact that counter-arguments are claims to truth. And how is it consistent for an atheist to make claims to truth when atheism has nothing to do with truth in the first place?
Well, because I'm not making the argument that atheism is true. You're making the argument that some other claim is true. Like you bring some kind of proof to me, like any of Aquinas' 5 ways, like cosmological argument, or any of those particular arguments. You bring any of those to me, just like in your analogy back there, I don't have to be correct in my beliefs in order to independently investigate whether or not your beliefs or your reason for beliefs are true. I can independently verify that. I can examine your arguments, and if they are convincing to me, then I would probably adopt your point of view on it. But all of the arguments that are given for God's existence are not compelling to me, so I remain an atheist. I don't see how this is illogical. If I try to convince you that Bigfoot walks around in the Smoky Mountains here in Dumbfucklandia, then wouldn't you say that you don't have to make a positive claim as to whether or not Bigfoot does or does not exist in order to independently verify whether or not he does exist in the Smoky Mountains of Dumbfucklandia? I mean, you don't have to put forth a positive claim about that in order to independently verify it. It's just the same thing with me. I don't have to have a positive position on whether or not God exists in order to investigate your arguments for God existing. I don't have to have a position on whether or not God exists in order to tell you that your arguments do not sufficiently support your conclusion. So no, I'm not being illogical by having a non-belief or lack of belief in a deity, but also point out how your arguments do not support your conclusion.
The other option is this. Atheists may accept the classical definition of atheism as being an actual claim to truth. That is, the claim that God's existence isn't plausible, or if you want, the denial of the claim that God's existence is plausible. Armed with this definition, atheists face no consistency problem when countering theistic arguments. However, this also means that there is no more running away from the responsibility to offer evidence for their own position.
I agree. If you're going to take the classical philosophical definition that's not really in use colloquially anymore, if you're going to accept that, then you do bear the burden of proof of proving that God does not exist as a positive claim. Now, a little bit of nuance on my position, because while I am agnostic on the idea of a deity existing in general, I am very gnostic on specific definitions of God that we have today. So like the Christian God, I am gnostic on whether or not he exists, and he definitely does not exist, and I do bear the burden of proof to prove that he does not exist. Now I can do that in several ways, mainly using the Bible to show you how the Bible is not representative of reality, and if the Bible isn't representative of reality and how reality works, then there's no hope for that particular definition of God to exist. So yes, I agree. If you're going to take a Gnostic position on a particular belief, then you bear the burden of proof to show how your belief is correct. For atheism, that would be proving that God does not exist. I'm an agnostic atheist, so as far as a deity in general goes, I don't have to do that. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's perfectly fucking normal. I would say most Christians probably fall in the Gnostic category as far as their beliefs and their particular definition of God goes. They know that their God exists because of whatever argument, either personal experience or any of Aquinas' 5 ways or anything like that. But I don't mean that as if to pigeonhole all Christians into a Gnostic category. There could be some agnostic Christians out there. If you are an agnostic Christian, I would really love to hear from you down in the comments.
So what type of atheist are you? The psychological state type atheist? Or an atheist with the guts to admit that his or her atheism is an actual claim to truth? If it's the latter, you stand on solid logical ground to fire away with your arguments against God's existence, and I'm looking forward to your comments.
No, you don't have to be a Gnostic atheist in order to have firm footing to show how your arguments don't support your conclusion. Regardless of a person's position on a particular claim, we can definitely independently verify whether or not your arguments support your claim or your evidence supports your claim. It doesn't matter whether or not I believe in a God or not. I can investigate your claims to see if they are supported by good evidence. And I find that they're not. So I feel like you're making a false dichotomy between these two positions. You're confusing the differences between psychological states and truth claims, and I feel like in this entire video you've spent it kind of convoluting the conversation, because you try to make it out like atheists are saying that their psychological state is true or false, but that's not what atheists are actually saying. For the most part, I would say that most atheists are in the agnostic atheist corner. I don't mean to speak for everybody. There's definitely Gnostic atheists out there that take to the classical definition of atheism, meaning that it's a positive claim that a God does not exist. But both parties can obviously investigate the truth value of your claims, regardless of their position on whether or not they know a God to exist.
If you're just a psychological state type atheist, you're of course just as welcome to comment and fire away with your objections to God's existence. However, by virtue of doing so, you'd be throwing out your commitment to logic. Or to put it differently, you'd be as credible as someone who argues that my excitement about seeing that eagle is not true, whatever that means.
Well, yeah, somebody can call bullshit on you actually feeling that feeling. I don't understand why this is such a crazy thing. Because I mean, we call bullshit on those particular types of claims all the time, which it is a claim that you had that feeling. So we can test whether or not, you had that feeling. I mean, ultimately, it may come down to just trusting you at your word, which, I mean, honestly, Lucas, I feel like you're a pretty reasonable person most of the time, it seems. So I would say that I would trust that you felt awe whenever you saw the bird, or surprise, or whatever feeling that you felt. I don't see any reason to distrust you in communicating what you're feeling, but there are definitely people out there that do, communicate that, something that they're feeling, but they're not actually feeling it. They're lying about what they're feeling. This is an obvious thing that happens all the time in society. So I don't understand why you're acting like it's such a crazy thing to doubt whether or not you had that feeling, because we do it all the time. Also, for all you heathens out there, you're definitely not throwing logic out the window whenever you counter a claim made by an apologist. You can independently investigate whether or not that claim is true, or whether or not their arguments hold up, regardless of what your position is. They are mutually exclusive. Well, heathens, that's going to be it for me today. I'm really enjoying all these dilemmas that religious people are bringing up now, because you had Braxton Hunter's dilemma, and now you've got Lucas's dilemma here. These all just seem to be not dilemmas whatsoever, and they all seem to be confusing two different things within their dilemma and kind of convoluting the conversation. Maybe not purposefully, but I feel like that is what these dilemmas accomplish. So, if you will, please go down below, let me know what you think about Lucas's dilemma down in the comments. Hey, while you're down there, why don't you smash that like button and subscribe if you like this kind of video. Don't forget to stand up and use your voice. Bye, heathens!